Ja Morant can't save the Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies have been struggling tremendously since the suspension of Ja Morant. They are currently the second worst team in the Western Conference with a record of 5-14, and they are 4 games back from just having a play-in spot. But why are they so bad now? In 2021, the Grizzlies were 20-5 when Ja was out with an injury. Aside from obviously missing the offensive impact of Morant, I think this team jumped the gun on trading Dillon Brooks. Dillon dug a hole for himself after creating this villain image of himself during the playoff series against LeBron and the Lakers, and instantly regretted poking that bear.
I don't care, he's old.
Not long after being eliminated, the Grizzlies front office came out and said they would not re-sign Brooks under any circumstance, which is a crazy public statement to make. They labeled him as a locker room distraction, but it looks like he has those young guys in that Houston Rockets locker room locked in. Up until this 3-game losing streak, the Rockets were a top 6 seed, with Brooks obviously still delivering at an all NBA defense level, but he also began the first 10 or so games of this season shooting 50-40-90 splits, and is currently still shooting above 40% from 3 at 45% and has a 60% true shooting percentage, averaging 13 points as the 4th option, maybe even as a 5th option. This is great production. So having a guy like that who can fill the role of being a 2nd option on a Grizzlies team who desperately needs firepower would definitely help, especially when you consider you let him walk for absolutely nothing in return. On the other side things, Desmond Bane has been having a relatively successful season so far, being the number 1 option, even though he's more fit to be a 2 or maybe a 3. But Jaren Jackson Jr. has fallen off a cliff. This was the guy I thought would break out in Ja's absence. I thought he would be an Anthony Davis type of player. But over the last 10 games, he's averaging only 17 points per game, and that's 1 less point from last season. But he's taking 3 more shots a game, which that itself is already an issue. With your star player out, you need to be more assertive and you need to be taking more shots. I watched you in the playoffs last season take 21 shots to drop 31 points on a DPOY candidate in Anthony Davis. We've seen all those flashes of greatness from Triple J. So him shooting 35% from the field these last 10 games is completely unacceptable. And then he's also barely shooting 20% from 3. It's absolutely atrocious. And then when you combine that with the stroke of terrible injury luck that Memphis has had, it's no wonder they're in the position they're in now. The biggest guy they're losing to injury is Steven Adams. Steven Adams was huge for this team during the regular season. The Ja Morant Steven Adams screen action is elite. The Grizzlies have an offensive rating of 118 when Ja and Adams share the court, but it drops all the way down to 106 the second Adams steps off the court. Adams also led the league in offensive rebounds the last time he was healthy, and that's a lot to be missing. He does all those little things that take a good team to being a great team. Brandon Clark is another great role player out with a torn Achilles with no timeline for return. Marcus Smart has also been having foot and ankle issues. Luke Kennard, a knockdown shooter, is out now too. And you have a 35-year-old Derrick Rose leading your offense for a large chunk of minutes, which he's actually been doing a lot better than I expected. But in all reality, the most his role was supposed to be was a babysitter for Morant to try to help him stay out of trouble. If Morant is able to stay out of trouble, he's due to return on December 19th. But looking at their upcoming games, they have some scheduled losses coming up against the Timberwolves, the Mavs, and the Thunder. So by the time Ja is back, the Grizzlies may be 7-18 or even worse. The question now becomes, is Ja Morant enough to save the 2nd worst team in the West 25 games in? Last time we saw Ja, he was averaging 26 points a game, 6 rebounds, and 8 assists, and his 3-ball was also improving. But unless he became a 38% 3-point shooter during this break, it's going to be hard for this team to come back. Missing 25 games is a ton, and as great of a player Ja is, I just don't see him picking right back up where he left off. There's definitely going to be some type of rust. And also, the roster went through quite a bit of overhaul. It's very hard for 2 point guards to figure out how to share the floor together, since it's going to be him and Marcus Smart sharing that backcourt. And we just saw with the Hawks, Trey and DeJounte just now seem to be figuring it out, and it's a year after the trade. Obviously, the ball needs to be in Ja Morant's hands, but where does that leave Marcus Smart? He's only a 30% 3-point shooter. teams are going to start to leave him out there and dare him to shoot. So let's say it takes 15 games to get everyone in alignment and they win half of those 15 games. It still would not put them in a top 10 seeding 35 games in unless 2 or 3 of those higher seeding teams fall off a cliff. Yeah, I wouldn't rule Ja out 100%, but coming back from a 25 game suspension with your team essentially being a lottery team at this point with the second worst record in the West all the way back up to a playoff spot would be a historic feat. Let me know what you guys think. Are the Grizzlies going to make the playoffs? Are they going to miss it? And remember to like, comment, and subscribe.